Disney has a lot of racial issues. But I'm not talking about those. Society evolves, I used to think, toward a more equal and just world. However, that might have just been wishful thinking. Disney often anthropomorphizes animals and objects to create their narratives, even going as far as creating societies of their own, structured around these characters. This leads to a lot of major issues, though, when translating real-life analogs into these worlds. Pluto and Goofy. Goofy is a dog. He's not a cow. I won't take that nonsense. He debuted in 1932 as Dippy Dog. Pluto is also a dog, and there are various other canines in the Mickey Mouse cartoons that are either pets or persons. So what gives? I really only bring this up to set a precedent that Disney has always had some undertone of classism and even racism baked into their media. So I'm only going to cover weird stuff like that, where it doesn't seem like it was really intentional, but where does it come from? I know they're just trying to build worlds that kids can relate to, so that could be a fair playoff for most of these. I'm going to cover 3 other Disney movies that are basically just about racism, and I'm going to cover the strengths and weaknesses of each depiction. The 2 Pluto-like bits of what the fuckery that we got with the advent of the CG animation movies are Bug's Life and the entire Cars franchise. To start with A Bug's Life, because I've already covered it, the entire movie is about classism. The grasshoppers are a forcefully violent upper class, dictating their will on the meek working class of ants and mosquitoes? Hell, we even see an unhoused bug in the city. But you know what else we see? 3 centipedes. 1 centipede is a massage therapist. Good for him. But we see 2 more, and they are pulling the circus wagons. We even see a clear difference in their eyes, but that's the only difference really. I've watched this movie about 1,000 times, and they are otherwise identical. So what's up with this? Did P.T. Flea find these centipedes at birth and raise them to be animals? This may be an isolated bug situation though. Maybe somewhere bug rights are respected. But it does lead into the greatest rabbit hole breeder of all time. You can't call it that. Well, I'm leaving it in, so... Cars is a movie that only creates conflict in the viewer. How did we get here? Who made all these? Do they have to buy health insurance or car insurance? These are the major questions that keep me up at night. But the other major question that I have for you today is, what is the difference between a tractor and a forklift? Is a combine harvester a less complicated machine than my Ford Focus? Are they just refusing to educate entire classes of people for labor-based purposes? And what's up with Bessie?
I have no mouth, and yet I must scream.
So we all know World War II happened in the Cars universe, based on the Jeep. So World War I had to have happened because you can't have the sequel without the first movie, right? What about the prequel? What was the prequel to the World Wars, you may ask? The American Civil War, of course, which is 100% fought over states' rights. Specifically the racist states' rights that said that they could have slaves. Fuck you. The Civil War is where submarines were first used in warfare, which we see submarines in the Cars universe. Semi-automatic and rapid-fire weapons were developed and mass-manufactured, which we also see in the Cars universe. And the Civil War created the infrastructure for even more manufacturing of wartime products, which we see so many of in the Cars universe. This movie takes place in America. That says a lot about the history that happened in this world. Like I said with Zootopia, nothing happens in a vacuum. And if this is America, then all the baggage that comes with the Stars and Stripes also befell this combustion-based land of liberty. I just want to add that clearly sentience and life is based on the complexity of the machinery. Nuclear bombs, and furthermore pretty much every missile ever, has been a complex piece of machinery, bordering on the complexity of a car. Definitely the complexity of a Model T. So is every missile a kamikaze? Before we get into the second part of the video, please like and subscribe to save me from a day job. The first movie I'm going to cover with intended racial undertones is The Fox and the Hound. I haven't seen this movie in literally decades, but I always remember it being a classic. It's got a good through line, And since it's animals being animals, they couldn't really do anything actually that racist with the animations. But they could cover the loss of innocence that comes with growing up. As Cooper is exposed to more of the hunting world and trained to be a hunting dog, he loses sight of his friendship with Todd. Eventually, he makes the right choice after Todd saves him, and overall this movie shows the change that can happen as people grow up in certain conditions. It's the emphasis on nurture rather than nature that is amazing, especially with these characters being a fox and a hound. They are both animals and should fall back to their animal instincts. But much like in nature, we see when the young of different species are made to interact, they often don't see these differences and just play because that's what they have common ground on. This is the most honest depiction because it doesn't try and solve systemic issues, it just mourns them. It acknowledges that socializing, training the dog to hunt, is what kills the natural bond of equality. It's a tragedy about how society breaks children to fit its prejudices. The two from our modern era that had heavy racial undertones were Zootopia and Elemental. I'm gonna start this off by saying I don't hate Elemental. It's a good movie, it was just marketed like shit. It should have been more clear to the viewer what audience it was for. And it came out during the Big Sick, so no one was seeing movies. These movies both have the premise of a big city full of different types of people, but that's really where the similarities stop. I'm gonna be breaking this down into a few different categories for you. Motivations. Elemental's racial issues feel like they had no clear motivations, aside from we don't mix well, besides the gardens not allowing fire people, and the villains of the movie not relating back to this in some way, feels like something's missing. If an upper management cloud or a forest person was trying to flood Fire District to clear it out and perform some form of gentrification, that would have been a better plot point. Without that, the city just really feels like a horrible managed death trap. Not saying cities don't have laziness and slow bureaucracy, but Elemental just had so many working parts that drag it down in the end, and it asks the audience to make it all make sense. Which can be good if your audience isn't children. As much as these things are more realistic, because oftentimes failed governments lead to systemic racism, it doesn't translate to a child because there isn't a bad guy. On the flip side, Zootopia gives us villains and subverts your expectation. It gives you a shady criminal sheep or a trustworthy optimistic snake, and the motivations of these characters are great. I understand why Smellweather wants to undermine the social trust in predators. It's very clear and it makes a lot of sense. I'm not saying the story needs to be spoon-fed to me. On the contrary, both of these movies are mysteries, but they're mysteries your 10-year-old should be able to solve about halfway through the second act, or the beginning of the third, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a movie for kids, and the takeaways are supposed to be, don't treat everyone like shit. If they get too mixed up in the motivations or why certain things happen, like me, they won't be able to take away those major plot beats. That's why Zootopia has more staying power than Elemental. The story builds on itself and makes more sense in the end based on the social tensions we see. The infrastructure isn't an issue. It's the big ideas with predators versus prey and how it translates to the real world. Predators are obviously an allegory for
Thugs lined up.
Rioters, looters, thugs.
The rioters and the thugs.
but Fire and Water doesn't really translate to anything. This brings us to the next category, character design. Zootopia builds a rich tapestry of diverse-looking characters. Animals represent different races in our society so much better than 4 different types of elements ever could. If you look at a busy street full of people, it looks way more like the cover of Zootopia than it does anything we see in Elemental. Having only 4 representations of people and making it so there's nothing they have in common reduces the way we can really relate to the characters. I may feel like a fiery bitch sometimes, or even a tall glass of water, but I can also find so many things in common with somebody who is a different ethnicity than me. And more than just rudimentary likes and dislikes. If I eat something that gives me gas, I'm sure it will do the same to all of them. And farts can be a universal language of laughter. That is something I think is completely lost in Elemental City. Aside from my potty humor, you lose a lot of nuance in a story this way. The stakes. From Judy's fox spray to the way that one bunny looks at the tiger on the bus, the world of Zootopia has stakes, and they're meaningful. The society is on the verge of total collapse. I'm not sure what's at stake in Elemental, aside from a small neighborhood. Like, I know fire and water don't mix, but the city is the one who really fucked up. Gail should be fired and possibly prosecuted for her part in just letting the waterway destroy that train line and half of a town. Tempered glass my ass. She should have made sure a secondary repair crew went and fixed the issue. It's also never explicitly said, but Bernie started Firetown, so he should get some recognition from the city for bringing an entire group of people to the city. He's a fucking pioneer. But no one even gives a shit about the dude that started the equivalent to this city's Chinatown. Cloud people must be pot smoke, Earth people must be growing some ganja on them, because the entire management of this city is just way too lax. All in all, I feel like when it's the focus, Disney can tell a very human story about racial tensions using anthropomorphic beings. When they don't pay attention, though, they create horrors on par with the darkest parts of the human existence. If you take any part of this video the wrong way, fuck you. Reddit got shitty, so I won't be posting there much anymore, unless it's to the Zootopia sub, because those folks are legends. If I didn't cover the racist kids movie you like, let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you enjoy these insane ramblings, because I don't know what to do with most of them. That's part of the reason why this series started. Check out some of my other videos, like the one that I'm going to be posting on whichever side it is here, and make sure you have a wonderful time of your life, brother.
And hey, if you want to comment that I'm racist, I guess, for making this video, considering I got called sexist for the last video, go right ahead. You're boosting my engagement. I love that. And everybody can comment their own stupid opinions, just like how I can post my own stupid opinions in video format. And you watched it anyway, so haha.